Let's just get this out in the open, the sound of tire treads grinding across your prize-winning grass sticks with you. Maybe it's the humiliation, maybe it's the principle, but either way, 47 times is 47 too many. And when you see Marlene Kensington, the self-declared HOA queen, roll her spotless BMW right up onto your lawn again like she's parking at the Ritz, you realize you're either about to break or about to get creative. Now, I've never been the type to go looking for a fight. At 63, with 4 decades of engineering behind me, I'm wired to fix problems, not cause them. Ask my wife Sandra, she'll tell you I can repair anything except her habit of drowning the houseplants. My corner lot in Meadowview Estates, that patch of Kentucky bluegrass. That was my sanctuary. Every Saturday I'd mow it in crisscross patterns, sharp enough to draw blood edges so crisp you'd swear they were ironed. I even named my tools Rita the socket wrench, Eddie the level, and my pride Precise Pete the micrometer I've owned since engineering school. But these days retirement's less about sipping lemonade and more about pinching pennies. I lost my job 2 years early thanks to a corporate downsizing that left my pension looking pretty thin. Add in a diabetes diagnosis with medication that costs more than my first car, and well-precision work gets harder when your hands start shaking. That lawn, it became my last island of order. After Sandra's memory started slipping, her forgetting names, dates, sometimes even where we'd put the keys, I started to cling to that little green rectangle even more. Then Marlene showed up. Imagine the love child of a trust fund and a wrecking ball, all heels, clipboard, and inherited steel fortune. Never worked a real job in her life, but she sure knew how to run the HOA like a family fiefdom. Her BMW was her crown, her parking spot was wherever she damn well pleased, and her idea of charity trampling over other people's boundaries literally. The first time I tried the polite route. "Marlene, would you mind not parking on my lawn?" She barely looked up. "This is HOA business, Eugene. Your grass will grow back." By the 10th time, I knew she was testing me. By the 47th, I realized she was daring me to do something about it. See, there's a line between inconvenience and disrespect, and Marlene erased it with her tires. So while she played suburban royalty, this old engineer started planning. But before we get to the $5 can of expanding foam, you gotta understand how deep the game went. The parking lot by the community center, 43 spaces, never full. But Marlene, she found a shortcut. If she cut across my front yard, she could park 15 feet from the door, not 50 yards away like the peasants. "My heels don't do gravel," she'd say, as if gravity didn't apply to Louboutins. It started with tire tracks, then ruts. When I tried a polite rope barrier, nothing ugly, just posts and a little marine rope, she flattened it like a speed bump. Next morning, a letter, $150 daily fine for unsightly barriers that threaten emergency access. Funny, since my rope was set 20 feet back, nowhere near any access route. I checked the HOA covenants. Anything under 3 feet was fair game. Didn't matter. She wanted me to know who was boss. So I started documenting. Spreadsheets, timestamps, weather, photographs, the depth of her ruts versus soil moisture. Sandra watched me, worried but also kind of proud. "Your dad always said, become something they can't control." I thought about that a lot. Then came the mini twist. One Tuesday, replacing crushed sprinkler heads, I noticed Marlene's tire marks were always identical. Same entry, same exit, same stop to check her makeup. Predictable like clockwork. And engineers, we love patterns. The next day I walked the path with a tape measure. 43 steps. Same spot where her wheel paused every time. It hit me barriers hadn't worked because I was fighting her head on. Time to solve for her behavior, not against it. So I tried official signs. Private property, no vehicle access, violators will be towed, bold letters, legal language. I even checked with the police, but the next day she mowed them down with friends. 3 catering trucks behind her, turning my lawn into a war zone. The smell of diesel, busted sprinklers, roots torn up my yard was toast. Friday, another envelope. This time, an $847 invoice for community landscaping repairs for damage her trucks caused but billed to me because of improperly installed signs. My hands shook, reading it not with rage but with calculation. See, Marlene didn't know she'd just handed me the rope to hang her with. My neighbor Tom, a retired insurance adjuster, watched the carnage. "Those trucks snapped off sprinklers that were busted for months," he said, grinning. He'd been watching water pool there every morning. With his help and Sandra's steady hand, I started seeing the bigger picture. It wasn't about me or my lawn. It was about Marlene's system fraud hidden as charity intimidation dressed as policy. The next twist landed in my kitchen, Danny Tom's son, a journalism student digging through HOA records for a class project. "You need to see this," he said, laying out documents, tax filings, insurance claims, all in Marlene's name, all double-dip tax deductions for repairs, insurance payouts for the same events, contracts routed to a cousin's landscaping company that never did a lick of work in our state. Over 3 years, $47,000 in fraudulent claims. And my case was just the tip. Suddenly, it wasn't about boundaries anymore, it was about federal law. So I called my insurance, filed a claim for property damage, and asked for a fraud investigation. I called the county, pulled all the HOA covenants and maintenance records. I called Danny, told him he had a real story. When Marlene tried to counterclaim, alleging that my hostile signage caused her to swerve to avoid an elderly pedestrian, her timeline was off. My photos showed her trucks arriving 5 minutes before the alleged incident. And engineers love when someone else's numbers don't add up. Then came the big one. Holiday Hope Gala, November 12th. 65 guests parking temporarily designated for my lawn by HOA emergency provisions. Marlene invented a charitable parking crisis, and the local paper ran a story painting her as a hero and me as the cranky neighbor who hated children's literacy. But the IRS had already flagged her for suspicious deductions, and the FBI had opened a case for interstate insurance fraud. So I did what any sensible engineer would do. I built a trap. Not to hurt her, just to stop her. Expanding foam. A $5 can buried exactly where her tire always landed. Tom's security cameras trained on the spot. Maria, a friendly prosecutor, explained what I needed: timestamps, video witnesses. Even Danny got the Channel 7 news van to come, promising a story about the biggest charity event in Meadowview Estates history. Saturday evening. November cold, but the whole neighborhood buzzing. Sandra brewed coffee and stood beside me at the window. "You ready?" she asked. I nodded, watching Marlene's BMW approach, right on schedule, her grand entrance, same as always. She didn't see a thing until it was too late. The car rolled over the foam canister, which burst, spewing sticky yellow foam that wrapped around her front tire and hardened in seconds. Marlene slammed the brakes, but physics doesn't care about entitlement. 30 seconds later, her car was going nowhere, anchored to my lawn like a monument to poetic justice. Phones whipped out, cameras clicked, Channel 7 went live. I walked out slow, steady, knowing every eye was on me. "That's 1 can of expanding foam," I said loud enough for the cameras. 47 times you've trespassed, caused $8,000 in damages, and filed fraudulent claims. Now you're parked here until you pay for every penny." Dead silence except for Marlene's stammering and the murmurs of the crowd. The news segment went viral, 2 million views by Sunday. Within a week, Marlene's financials were in federal custody. Her presidency suspended, her BMW seized for restitution. The feds uncovered $127,000 in fraudulent profits across multiple communities. Meadowview got $43,000 in damages back. I restored my lawn, put in new irrigation for Sandra, and by spring was running a community tool library teaching neighbors how to fix things, not just suffer them. That's the real twist: when you stand up, others follow. We rewrote the HOA bylaws, public votes for events, transparency for finances, no more emergency powers. Danny's expose won a journalism award and triggered new state legislation for HOA oversight. Sandra stabilized, the new greenhouse bloomed, and every Saturday the neighborhood buzzed with the sound of folks borrowing tools instead of filing complaints. And Marlene. 18 months of community service, most of it spent restoring the very lawns she'd trashed. That's karma, engineered with patience, precision, and a little expanding foam. Here's what all those years in engineering taught me: sometimes the smallest, most calculated move sets off the biggest chain reaction. You add up the trespasses, you document the damage, and you wait for the moment when injustice can't hide anymore. In the end, it's not about revenge, it's about restoring order, one patch of grass at a time. So what would you have done in my shoes? Ever had a run-in with an HOA? Drop your own story below. Let's hear about your battles, your victories, your own Marlene's. And if this hit that sweet spot for justice, let me know what you think is karma. Real? Or does it take a little engineering to make it happen?
Cảm ơn các bạn đã xem video.